I still tasted the sharp bite of hospital antiseptic at the back of my throat 5 days after the birth. Leo slept against my chest, impossibly light yet radiating a heat that sank into my bones. I held him as though the universe itself might shatter if I loosened my grip. The nurse smiled as she lifted my nearly empty duffel bag. "Congratulations on your discharge, Mrs. Thorne. Little Leo is perfectly healthy." The bag held only a few changes of clothes for him and the discharge papers. Its weightlessness felt like a quiet indictment of how thoroughly I had been cut off from everything that once belonged to me. Outside the room, Caleb leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes locked on his phone. He scrolled without pause, the blue light painting his face in cold indifference, even when the nurse called his name with forced cheer. "Mr. Thorne, your wife is ready." He looked up only after a deliberate delay, irritation already carved into the lines around his mouth. He shoved the phone into his pocket, walked toward us, and took the bag from the nurse without a word of thanks. No glance at Leo, no offer of an arm for the woman still raw from a C-section. "Cars parked, let's go." He turned and walked away. I followed because there was nothing else to do. The autumn wind sliced through my thin cardigan and made Leo stir. I tightened my hold, the only thought in my head a desperate mantra: keep him warm. In the circular driveway sat the jet-black Maybach my father had given me on my 20th birthday. Since the wedding, Caleb had driven it almost exclusively, treating it as the visible proof of his rising status as a tech startup CEO. I had allowed myself a small, foolish hope that he would open the rear door, ease me and Leo inside, and perhaps, just perhaps, say something human. "You did well, anything." He walked straight past the car. I stopped as though the asphalt had grown roots around my feet. My mind emptied. "Caleb." The name left my mouth as a strangled whisper. He turned, scowling. "What are you doing? I told you this way." A white-hot spike of pain flared along the incision. I forced myself forward, cold dread spreading through me like fog. "Aren't we taking the car home?" He jerked his chin toward the bus route map, as if I had asked the densest question imaginable. "You're taking that." From his pocket, he pulled a crumpled $20 bill and a handful of change, then shoved the cold metal into my palm. "This will get you to the apartment. My parents and my sister are coming over today. I'm taking them to that new steakhouse in the meatpacking district. I already made the reservation. I can't be late." I stared at the coins, then at the man who had once sworn he loved me. In my arms, our 5-day-old son breathed softly. "Caleb, I was discharged less than an hour ago. It's been 5 days since the surgery. Leo is 5 days old. You're telling me to take him on a city bus?" He waved the objection away with open contempt. "Don't be dramatic. My sister was on her feet 3 days after she had her kid. It's not even rush hour. There'll be seats. Hurry up. They're almost here." As if summoned, the Maybach's headlights flashed twice. Caleb's parents, his sister Brenda, emerged from another exit, laughing, and climbed into my car with the easy familiarity of people who had always belonged inside it. They never once looked in my direction. "Look, your bus is here. Go on." Caleb gave me a light shove toward the curb. "Just relax at home. There are leftovers in the fridge. Heat something up." He slid into the driver's seat and drove away. The red taillights vanished into the stream of city traffic, leaving me alone with a newborn and a fistful of change. The bus arrived with a rattling groan. The air inside smelled of dust and exhaust. Every step up the stairs sent a fresh knife of pain through my abdomen. I fed the crumpled bill into the fare box. The driver glanced at the paled woman holding a baby and said nothing. I sank into a window seat. When the bus lurched forward, the incision screamed, and I bit down on a gasp. Outside, the city glittered. Skyscrapers, polished avenues, the world I had once walked through without fear. The last 2 years with Caleb unspooled behind my eyes. I had hidden the Sterling name, desperate for a love that had nothing to do with my family's wealth. In the beginning, he had been gentle, almost tender. The change had been slow and deliberate, first after the pregnancy, then more sharply once he landed his first major project through Sterling connections. His mother and sister began calling me a gold digger to my face. The Thorne household was never the home I had imagined. It was a swamp I had walked into with my eyes closed. At a red light, the Maybach pulled up beside the bus. Through the tinted glass, I saw them laughing. Caleb turned toward Brenda in the passenger seat, his profile lit by a genuine, relaxed smile. The kind of smile he had not given me in months. Something inside me froze solid. It was not sadness. It was clarity, pure and absolute, followed by a rage colder than the autumn wind. The light changed. The Maybach shot forward and disappeared. I looked down at Leo's sleeping face. His tiny mouth worked in a dream. I unlocked my phone, scrolled to a contact I had never once dialed myself, and pressed call. It rang once. Cordelia. My father's voice, deep and already edged with worry. I drew a breath that tasted of blood and antiseptic and bus exhaust. "Dad," I said, the words quiet but forged from steel. "Can you help me? I want to leave him." The worry vanished, replaced by a controlled fury so cold it could have frozen the Hudson. "What did he do to you? Where are you and my grandson?" I told him everything in flat, precise sentences. The handful of cash, the bus, the steakhouse, the Maybach that was mine. My voice cracked only once. A deadly silence stretched across the line. When Harrison Sterling spoke again, his voice was low and absolute. "Listen to me, it is over. You will not suffer another second. I am sending someone right now. Do not go back to that apartment. I will handle the rest." He did not need to explain. The promise alone carried the weight of a machine already grinding into motion. The bus rattled on. The ordinary conversations of strangers, the ordinary streets outside the window. None of it belonged to the same world anymore. The fire of rage had banked into something quieter and far more dangerous. Certainty. When the bus finally stopped, I climbed down carefully, every step a fresh reminder of the incision. I stood in front of the pre-war walk-up Caleb and I had once called our love nest, too exhausted even to dig for keys. A black SUV glided to a stop behind me, a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, whose sheer presence made pedestrians turn. The rear door opened. Mr. Graves, my father's executive assistant of 20 years, stepped out in a black suit and white gloves. "Miss Sterling," he bowed. "Mr. Sterling sent me to bring you and the young master home." Behind him, two young women in crisp uniforms, a baby nurse and a postpartum nurse, moved with quiet efficiency. One took Leo from my arms with perfect professional care. The other supported my elbow so that no strain touched the incision. I let them guide me into the soft leather interior. The air was warm and clean, a universe away from the bus. The car pulled away, leaving the apartment and the 2 years I had spent there for love behind like soiled laundry. Our destination was Queens. It was the Sterling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, the house where I had grown up. Mr. Graves drove in silence. The nurses checked Leo, offered me water, draped a cashmere blanket over my lap. Everything was seamless. I closed my eyes. Exhaustion rolled over me, yet my mind remained razor-sharp. 2 years of believing I loved him. 2 years of enduring the insults, accepting the modest lifestyle, pretending the Thorne family was something other than a pack of hyenas. It had all been a miserable illusion of my own making. There had never been real love, only a foolish man who grew arrogant without understanding the prize he had been handed, and a family that flocked to the kill. The car passed through iron gates, climbed a long winding drive, and stopped before a mansion that looked like a modern castle. My father stood at the top of the steps in a navy cashmere cardigan. He looked past everyone else, his gaze locking first on me, then on the baby in the nurse's arms. "Dad." My voice was hoarse. He did not embrace me. He took my face in both hands, grip firm, then signaled for the nurse to bring Leo to him. For the first time he held his grandson. Tenderness, pity, and a volcanic rage held in check by pure will moved across his face. "You're home," he said. "That's all that matters." He issued orders. "Take Miss Sterling and the baby to her rooms. Call the doctor. Let them rest." Surrounded by staff, I stepped into the grand foyer. Marble floors shone like mirrors, a crystal chandelier threw soft light, the faint scent of sandalwood hung in the air. This was the world I had been born to inhabit, the world I had willingly abandoned. My old bedroom waited exactly as I had left it, except for the top-of-the-line bassinet and carefully chosen baby supplies arranged in the corner, as though they had always known I would return. The family doctor examined us both and declared us fine as long as we rested. A nurse redressed the incision. A maid helped me into soft silk pajamas. Warm soup arrived on a silver tray. When we were finally alone, my father sat opposite me. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning." Holding a cup of warm milk, I began. I told him about the discharge, the handful of cash, the Maybach driving away with his family, the smile I had seen through the bus window. My tone stayed flat, as if I were reading a report about a stranger. Harrison's expression never changed, but his knuckles turned white where his hands rested on his knees. When I finished, silence filled the room. He stood, walked over, and awkwardly stroked my hair. In that instant the dam broke. A sob tore free, the sound of a child who had finally found safety. His large hand continued to stroke my head in silence. "It's over," he said quietly. "You won't suffer anymore. From now on, Sterling Holdings will be your shield and the boys. I will never let anyone lay a finger on either of you again. Do whatever you want. Even if the sky falls, your father will hold it up." The sharp ring of a telephone cut through the quiet. A moment later, Mr. Graves appeared, expression troubled. "Mr. Sterling, there is a call for Miss Cordelia. It is Mr. Thorne. He is demanding to know where his wife is, and complaining that there is no food in the refrigerator. He wishes to know where she has been gallivanting." The last fragments of any remaining affection turned to dust. No food in the refrigerator. Where have you been gallivanting? Those were not the words of a husband 5 days after his wife's C-section. They were the words of a master rebuking a negligent servant. Harrison watched the color drain from my face. He removed his hand from my shoulder and spoke calmly. "Hang up the phone and block all calls from Caleb Thorne to this estate. He is never to be connected again." "Very good, sir." Mr. Graves left. Once more, it was only father, daughter, and the quietly breathing baby. Harrison walked to the massive mahogany desk and picked up the internal line. His back was as broad as a mountain. I could feel the volcanic rage simmering just beneath the surface. "It's me." His voice on the phone was calm, but the low timbre held absolute pressure. "Pierce, sorry to call so late. It's an urgent matter regarding Caleb Thorne's next-gen innovations. The company you're funding in your Series B. Yes. Don't ask for a reason. As of this moment, Sterling Holdings has decided to cut off all support. I want you to move immediately to recoup your investment. There's a material breach of the trust relationship clause. Use it. Inform the other investors of Sterling's position. I'll speak to the chairman of Metro Urban Bank myself. First thing tomorrow morning, his company's primary lender will send in a team for an emergency asset assessment." Good. 48 hours. Within 48 hours, I want the name Next Gen Innovations wiped from the venture capital map. He hung up with a decisive click, a one-sided conversation that lasted only minutes. I understood perfectly. It was a death sentence. With a single word from my father, the castle of sand Caleb believed he had built would be washed away. Money and people would vanish like a receding tide. This was the true power of the Sterling name. Strength began to seep back into the hollow places inside me. I was no longer the weak woman forced onto a bus with cold leftovers waiting at home. I rose and walked to the bassinet. Leo's tiny chest rose and fell. To protect this child's future, I could become whatever the world required. This was not merely revenge. This was a battle for a future in which my son would never again be treated as an inconvenience. While I showered, letting hot water soothe the raw incision, Caleb's fate continued rolling past the point of no return. When I stepped out, my phone, left beside the change of clothes, vibrated madly. Caleb's name filled the screen. I stared at it for several seconds, then answered. His furious shouting erupted instantly, mingled with the shrill voices of his mother and sister. "Cordelia, where the hell are you? Why aren't you answering the house phone? My parents are here and the house is empty. There's no food in the fridge. What kind of wife are you? Don't think you can get away with this just because you think you're some big-shot CEO's wife." I took a quiet breath and spoke in a voice stripped of every emotion. Mr. Thorne, Leo and I are at my family's home in Greenwich, Connecticut. The shouting stopped. Background noise quieted. He must have covered the receiver. After a few seconds his voice returned, confusion and suppressed rage tangled together. Cordelia, what are you talking about? Your family home? What family home? Didn't you say your dad was an apple farmer in upstate New York? Don't tell me you took my son and ran off to some hick town. Get back here right now. Stop this stupid game. In his mind, I was still a petulant woman throwing a tantrum. The fact that he imagined my family home as a dilapidated farmhouse was so pathetic I felt only bottomless pity. Continuing the conversation was a waste of oxygen. I ended the call without another word and held the power button until the screen went black. The world fell silent. I stared at the dark rectangle in my hand. The story of a man's downfall had already begun, and the person who had pulled the trigger was me. I was the arbiter, the director, and the sole audience. Gazing out at the jeweled panorama of the New York skyline in the distance, I whispered, "You still have no idea, do you? You have no idea who and what you've made an enemy of." That night, for the first time in months, I slept deeply and without dreams. I had no way of knowing that in a high-rise tower in the heart of the city Caleb Thorne was spending a sleepless night in panic, fielding calls about inexplicable investment withdrawals that were nothing short of a death sentence for his company. His tragedy had only just begun. I surfaced from sleep the way a diver surfaces from deep water. A thin blade of morning light slipped through the blackout curtains. The only sound was the quiet hum of the humidifier. When I sat up, the agony in my lower abdomen had eased. Mental peace, it seemed, accelerated physical recovery. A kindly nurse in pale blue opened the door. "Miss Sterling, are you awake? The young master has just finished his milk and a diaper change. He is quite content in the nursery." I nodded and followed her. In the perfectly temperature-controlled room, Leo lay in an exquisitely crafted crib, clear eyes fixed on the mobile above him. His peaceful expression was a world away from the baby, jostled on a city bus for a few dollars the day before. This was the treatment my child was meant to receive. Warmth spread through my chest. "Mr. and Mrs. Sterling have requested that you rest well. Breakfast is ready. Would you prefer downstairs or shall I have it brought up?" "I'll go down. I had been cooped up too long, heart closed off. I needed to move." After washing and changing into a soft cashmere lounge set, I descended the spiral staircase. A full American breakfast waited on the long dining table. My mother, Eleanor Sterling, who never lost composure under any circumstances, sat reading the news on a tablet. She looked up, set the tablet aside, and her voice filled with undeniable relief and sympathy. "Cordelia, darling, come sit here. How are you feeling? Does the incision still hurt? Did you take the medication?" She took my hand and stroked it. "Yes, Mother, it's much better now." "Good. As long as you're home, that's all that matters." She had heard the entire story from Harrison the night before. She closed her eyes for a moment. Tears glistened. "You went through such a terrible ordeal, my sweet girl. From the very beginning I never trusted that man. His eyes never smiled. But you were so insistent. Well, there's no point in saying this now." She touched my cheek. "Don't you worry. As long as your father and I are here, I swear we will never let you or Leo suffer even the slightest hardship again." Harrison entered in workout gear, glistening with sweat from his morning training. Seeing me, his stern expression softened. "You have more color in your cheeks than yesterday." He took his seat. Mr. Graves immediately served a hot towel and green tea. Harrison wiped his hands and, as if discussing the weather, got straight to the point. "Regarding Thorne's company, the first investor officially sent notice of capital withdrawal this morning. The bank is scheduled to send an assessment team at 9 sharp. The waterfront redevelopment project he was banking on has also been scrapped." I'd stirred the oatmeal in front of me. My heart was as calm as a windless sea. In fact, I felt a slight dark amusement. A $20 bus fare, cold leftovers, and the catastrophic ruin he now faced. The contrast was so stark it was almost elegant. "Were there any more calls from him last night?" I asked. Harrison sipped his tea. "Yes, To the main house line after 1 a.m., Mr. Graves answered. Thorne was quite agitated, shouting, "Where is she? Tell her to come home now." Graves, as instructed, simply informed him that you and the baby were resting and could not be disturbed, then hung up. It was easy to imagine the rage on the other end. He still believed I had run off to some apple farm in upstate New York. What kind of face would he make when he learned the whole truth? The thought was almost entertaining. During breakfast, the estate phone rang again. After a brief exchange, Mr. Graves covered the receiver. "Sir, it is Mr. Thorne's father on the line." Eleanor's brow furrowed. Harrison wiped his mouth with a napkin. "What are his terms?" Mr. Graves relayed a few words. "He says he wishes to speak with you or Mrs. Sterling regarding the matter of Miss Cordelia and the baby. He suggests there may have been some misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Harrison scoffed. The sound was soft, yet it froze the air in the dining room. He spoke clearly for everyone to hear. "Graves, tell the man this. My daughter, 5 days postpartum, was forced to ride a public bus holding her newborn child because of his fine son's actions. With nothing but $20 in her hand, while his son, I might add, was driving my daughter's car to enjoy a lavish steak dinner with his entire family. Tell me, where in these facts is there room for a misunderstanding to be discussed? Shouldn't he be apologizing for his son's behavior first?" Mr. Graves repeated the words verbatim. A flustered male voice rose from the receiver. Mr. Graves replied in a polite but ice-cold tone, "I do apologize, Mr. Thorne, but Mr. Sterling is in the middle of his breakfast. I must let you go now," and disconnected the call. That merciless, absolute rejection was a more powerful blow than 100 of my tearful words could ever have been. I took a bite of oatmeal. The warm food settled in my stomach, and the warmth calmed me in a strange, steady way. After breakfast, my father announced he was going to his study. As he stood, he glanced back. "Cordelia, come with me for a moment." I followed him behind the heavy doors. On the massive mahogany desk, a thick file already waited. Harrison slid it in front of me. "Read this." His serious gaze held a meaning far heavier than simple comfort. I reached for the file with a trembling hand. What I held was not a simple report. It was a cold, ruthless autopsy of the fictional kingdom known as Next Gen Innovations. With every page my fingers trembled, and the blood drained from my face. Laid bare in stark numbers and chilling text was a reality mired in lies and filth. A world away from the glamorous success stories Caleb boasted about in magazine interviews, falsified financial statements, a complex scheme for siphoning funds through multiple shell companies, massive debt from excessive capital investments made solely for show, a record of precarious short-term loans, repeated like a Ponzi scheme to keep it all afloat. In the margins were countless notes in my father's handwriting, memos indicating the betrayal of an executive Caleb trusted most, the financial weaknesses of his largest client, a fatal flaw hidden in the contract with an overseas technology partner. It was like watching a master surgeon precisely marking the cancerous tumors on a patient's X-ray. I was stunned. The success of the man I had once loved and trusted was nothing more than a fragile, dirty illusion. The Maybach he drove, the fancy restaurant meals, all stage dressing for a dance on thin ice. "This is the true face of the man you chose, and the kingdom he built," Harrison said quietly, standing behind me. His voice held less anger than a deep resignation and pity. "It looks glamorous, but the foundation is rotten. The pillars are eaten away by termites. It could collapse at any moment. There are countless men like this in the world." He pulled a single chart from the report and placed it before me. A flowchart outlining several scenarios for the destruction of next-gen innovations. These are his critical vulnerabilities. NextGen's funding is almost entirely dependent on Sterling Holdings' reputation. Metro Urban Bank funds him because they believe we are behind him. His tech partners and major clients feel the same. They aren't partnering with Caleb Thorne. They're partnering with Sterling's son-in-law. He looked directly into my eyes. "Now the question is what we do. I can withdraw my credit guarantee. Once Sterling steps back, the other investors will panic and flee. The bank will immediately freeze his credit lines and call in his loans. It is the fastest way to bring everything down. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Once we start, there is no going back. I looked at the analysis, then remembered Leo's innocent face on the bus. The last of my hesitation vanished. Do it, I said, my voice cold. I want him to lose everything. Then I added, but I have one request. When he has lost everything, abandoned by the banks, by his clients, by his partners, even by his own family, in his moment of complete and utter despair, let me be the one to tell him why this all happened. Not because of a business failure or bad luck or someone's betrayal, but because of one single act. Telling me, 5 days postpartum, to get on that bus. Harrison saw the same ruthless light in my eyes that he recognized in himself. He nodded, looking satisfied and for just a moment a little sad. Very well, I will set the stage for you. Meanwhile, in the president's office of NextGen Innovations high above the city, Caleb sat at his desk unable to hide his irritation. He still couldn't reach me. Even if I had run off to some farm, my attitude was an insult. She won't get away with this when she comes back, he fumed. The office door flew open without a knock. His secretary burst in, face pale. Sir, it's terrible. I just got a call from JS Capital. They're demanding immediate full repayment of their investment, citing a breach of contract. What? Don't be ridiculous. I just spoke to Pierce yesterday. At that exact moment, the internal line blared. It was his CFO. Caleb, it's bad. Metro Urban Bank just called. The review for our next round of funding, scheduled for next week, has been suspended. Not only that, they're sending in an emergency asset team first thing tomorrow morning. He couldn't process it. It had to be a mistake. A sick joke. But the nightmare was only beginning. Sir, ABC Corp is on the line. They're pulling out of the ongoing project effective immediately. They won't give a reason, just a comprehensive business decision. Sir, a top priority emergency email from our American tech partner, Core. They're terminating the license agreement immediately. The reason cited is significant damage to brand image. Screams and panicked shouts echoed through the office. The blood drained from Caleb's face. His hands and feet went cold. His heart felt encased in ice. What is happening? What the hell is happening? This wasn't coincidence. Someone was systematically, deliberately destroying his company. Who? A rival? A disgruntled former employee? Faces flashed through his mind, but none of them had the power to orchestrate an attack of this scale. It never once occurred to him that the source of it all was a single phone call made by the wife he thought he had so cleverly dismissed with $20 for a bus ride. In full-blown panic, he grabbed his smartphone with a trembling hand, trying to call his last resort, a powerful political lobbyist with deep connections. He could fix this. But as he tapped the number, a merciless system message filled the screen. The number you have dialed has been disconnected or is no longer in service blocked. His phone slipped from his limp hand. Caleb Thorne slowly collapsed into the president's chair he had built for himself. The gates of hell had just swung open, silently and completely. Several days passed after I made that fateful decision in my father's study. My daily life was deceptively calm. Postpartum recovery was smooth. The doctor gave a clean bill of health. Above all, Leo's presence, his expressions growing richer each day, filled my heart with warm light. I rarely thought about the nightmarish days with the Thorne family anymore. They felt like a memory from a past life, distant and faded. One afternoon, while I enjoyed the sun on a garden bench with Leo, Mr. Graves approached, a rare hint of consternation on his face. Miss Sterling, a package has arrived at the main gate from Mr. Thorne. He specifically requested that you receive it personally. A package from Caleb. A faint ripple disturbed the calm surface of my heart. Could it be a letter of apology, or the mementos I had left behind at the apartment? What could he possibly have to say? Leaving Leo with the nanny, I went to the grand entrance hall. There on the floor sat a dirty cardboard box, the kind one might get from a supermarket, sealed haphazardly with packing tape. For Cordelia Sterling was scrolled across the side in a rough hand. The very sight of it dashed any faint hopes I might have had. Open it, please. A young maid carefully cut the tape. Out spilled my cheap personal belongings from the life with Caleb. A worn dressing gown. A set of drugstore cosmetics, parenting magazines I had read during pregnancy, all jumbled together like garbage. On top of it all lay a single folded sheet of paper. I picked it up. Unfolding it, I saw Caleb's furious, almost illegible handwriting, the ink smudged with frustration. Cordelia, enough with this disappearing act. What the hell do you think you're doing? Running off with the kid? Do you have any idea how much trouble you've caused my mother and sister? Here are your things. Take them back. The house was a pigsty with all your junk in it. Be back by noon today, or else I'll get serious and take legal action. Don't forget, you are my wife and that boy is a thorn, the heir to our family. I read the letter to the end, expression unchanging, no tears, no surge of anger. Only a profound disgust rising from the pit of my stomach, and a bottomless contempt. He still didn't get it. He had no idea his company was standing on the edge of a cliff, nor who was about to push him off. All he could think about was his own inconvenience, the annoyance of his property, his wife and child, not being where he wanted them. This man was beyond saving. I crumpled the letter in my fist and, as if touching something filthy, tossed it into a nearby wastebasket. Mr. Graves. Yes, Miss Sterling, please dispose of everything in this box. The clothes and books can be donated to charity. The cosmetics can be thrown away. I never want to see any of it again. As you wish. Seeing the absolute rejection in my icy voice and eyes, Mr. Graves asked no further questions. He gave instructions and the offending cardboard box was swiftly removed from my sight. That evening, the Sterling family held their monthly family dinner. Harrison's brothers, my uncles, and my cousins all gathered. The conversation was warm, the food exquisite, the atmosphere one of quiet solidarity. No one mentioned Caleb's name. It was as if he had already been erased. Later that night, after Leo was asleep, I stood on the balcony of my suite and looked out over the estate grounds. The air was crisp. The stars were sharp. I felt the last threads of the old Cordelia, the one who had endured, apologized, and diminished herself, finally snap. In their place stood someone colder, clearer, and infinitely more dangerous. The next phase of the destruction began exactly as my father had designed. Investors fled, banks called in loans, partners terminated contracts. Within 48 hours, Next-Gen Innovations was a smoking crater on the venture capital landscape. Caleb's high-rise office emptied, his employees scattered. His precious Maybach, still registered in my name, was quietly reclaimed by Sterling Asset Management and driven to the estate garage. I did not go to see it. I had no desire to look at the machine that had carried my humiliation. Days later, the public spectacle arrived. Caleb's mother and Brenda, armed with cheap handwritten signs and a megaphone, appeared at the main gate of the Greenwich community and began screaming, "Give us back our son! Give us back our grandson! Just because you're rich doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. This is a human rights violation." They lunged at passers-by, faces red, eyes bloodshot. Luxury cars honked, onlookers filmed. Mr. Graves came to my suite with a tablet, showing the live feed from our security cameras and from the investigators' hidden high-performance lens. I watched the carnival of clowns with a blank expression. Every ugly gesture, every foolish word was being meticulously recorded as perfect evidence for their own social execution. All orchestrated on the palm of the Sterling family's hand. Harrison's voice came over the internal line, calm and precise. Wait to call the police. Let them marinate in their own foolishness until they reach the peak of their absurdity. We must not be the aggressors. We must be the poor victims harassed by unreasonable madmen. Record everything in high definition. It will be invaluable evidence later. I turned off the monitor. It was no longer worth watching. A few minutes later, several police cars appeared as if from nowhere, silently but overwhelmingly surrounding them. "You are under arrest for obstruction of business and defamation. You'll have to come with us down to the station." Brenda and her mother stared blankly for a moment, then began to wail hysterically once again. What? What did we do? We're the victims here." Their pathetic resistance was futile against the stoic officers. The two of them, along with the dubious men they had hired, were unceremoniously bundled into the back of the patrol cars like sacks of garbage. The entire scene was captured from every angle by the smartphones of onlookers, and from the shadows by the professional-grade camera of our investigator. That night, on the front page of the nation's largest online news portal, acting on a carefully placed tip, a sensational headline appeared: *X, family of fallen tech CEO stages bitter rampage in exclusive neighborhood. Shocking video reveals all *. The article, while feigning a sympathetic tone, was masterfully constructed to condemn the Thorns. It detailed reckless management, suspected accounting fraud, and the whispered rumor that just 5 days after giving birth, the CEO had forced his wife and newborn onto a public bus while he took her luxury car to a steak dinner with his family. It suggested that the quiet rage of the wife's powerful family might be the real story behind the company's dramatic downfall. Within an hour, the comment section exploded. The hashtag #BitterFamily went viral. The entire country pounced on the trashy, real-life drama. He totally deserved it, forcing your wife on a bus 5 days postpartum to go eat steak. That's a character issue. Just saw the video. They're acting like total thugs. No wonder his company failed. Go wife's family. Take them down completely. Digital tattoo. This family's life in this country is over. Public opinion turned completely and overwhelmingly against the Thorn family. Their last-ditch appeal to the public had resulted in the worst possible outcome: the public execution of their own social lives by their own hands. In my suite, I quietly read the articles and the flood of scathing comments. My face remained blank. Just deserts, that was all. There was no need to dirty my own hands. They were destroying themselves with their own foolishness. Meanwhile, in a bleak interrogation room, Brenda and her mother faced a team of seasoned lawyers dispatched by the Sterling family. One of the lawyers stated calmly, each word carrying immense weight, "In addition to criminal charges for defamation and obstruction of business, we will be filing a civil suit for damages. For the damage to the Sterling family's brand image and the emotional distress caused to Miss Sterling, we will be seeking initial compensation in the amount of $3 million. At that number, the color completely drained from their faces. They finally understood, down to their very bones, that they had smeared mud on a godlike entity they should never have antagonized. They no longer had the energy even to scream. All the pieces were falling perfectly into place. I turned off the tablet and gazed out at the quiet nightscape. It was all over, or rather, I had ended it. Just then, my personal cell phone rang. The name on the screen was that of the female lawyer I had personally hired. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling. My apologies for the late hour. I have an update for you." "What is it?" "We just received a call from Caleb Thorne's legal counsel. They have informed us that they will accept all of our proposed terms unconditionally. They are requesting a full settlement." The news of the Thorne family's unconditional surrender brought no sense of victory to my heart. It was merely the inevitable conclusion, like watching an opponent in chess, having been checkmated, quietly tip over his king. I coolly instructed her to arrange the signing of the divorce agreement as soon as possible. A week later, the stage for this final ceremony was set in the royal suite of one of the city's most luxurious hotels, owned, of course, by Sterling Holdings. The room, normally reserved for heads of state and global VIPs, now opened its heavy doors for the sole purpose of putting a merciless end to one family's history. For the occasion, I chose a sharp black pantsuit. Its clean lines seemed to symbolize my wedded resolve. My makeup was minimal, but my eyes held a powerful light that could pierce through anyone. When I arrived on the top floor, the general manager bowed deeply and escorted me to the suite. Inside, my personal legal team and the elite lawyers from Sterling Holdings were already waiting, exuding an aura of impeccable readiness. They all stood and bowed their heads as I entered. I slowly sat down in a regal, throne-like chair placed by the window. Below me, the cityscape of New York spread out like a miniature model in the twilight. 15 minutes after the appointed time, a soft knock came at the door. Caleb Thorne, accompanied by his lawyer, entered the room. Everyone present held their breath. The man who entered was Michelle, having lost even the basic contours of a human being. He was even thinner than when I had last seen him, his cheeks sunken in an unhealthy way. The ill-fitting cheap suit he wore looked like a hand-me-down, and his vacant eyes refused to focus on anything in the room. He stared at a spot on the plush carpet, his back hunched like an old man, and walked with an unsteady gait. When he noticed me seated by the window, radiating an overwhelming presence, Caleb's shoulders flinched. As if shielding his eyes from a blinding light, he looked down and, prompted by his lawyer, collapsed weakly into a chair on the opposite side of the long table. The vast table separating us was a physical representation of the distance between our two lives, which would now never cross again. My lead lawyer stood up quietly. Her cold voice broke the heavy silence. We will now proceed with the signing of the divorce agreement between Miss Cordelia Sterling and Mr. Caleb Thorne. Mr. Thorne and your counsel, I trust you have reviewed the contents in advance, but for final confirmation I will read aloud the main points. She looked down at the thick document in her hands. Her voice was devoid of all emotion. Only the facts, one by one, stabbed into Caleb's heart like cold knives. Article 1. Sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Leo Sterling, shall be granted to the mother, Cordelia Sterling. Article 2. Caleb Thorne shall be exempt from child support payment obligations. This, however, is conditional upon the complete and total waiver of permanent visitation rights as stipulated in the next article. Article 3. Caleb Thorne, of his own volition, hereby permanently relinquishes all present and future visitation rights to his son Leo Sterling, and is forbidden from attempting any contact or communication with Cordelia Sterling, Leo Sterling, or any of their associates for any reason whatsoever. Article 4. Regarding the division of assets, both parties acknowledge that the contributions of Cordelia Sterling and her family, both tangible and intangible, were absolute in the formation of any assets acquired during the marriage. Therefore, Caleb Thorne completely waives any and all claims to the division of property. Article 5. Regarding damages, Caleb Thorne admits to causing severe mental and physical distress to Cordelia Sterling during the marriage, and to significantly damaging her reputation. As compensation for these damages, he shall pay Cordelia Sterling the sum of $5 million. The payment method shall be determined separately. $5 million. As the number was read aloud, a strangled whimpering sound escaped Caleb's throat. Wait, please. It was a voice as faint as a fly's buzzing. I can't pay that kind of money. And to never see Leo again. I can't. He tried to look at me with pleading eyes, but my gaze remained fixed on the evening view outside the window. I never once turned to look at him. His lawyer, sitting beside him, gently grabbed his arm with a look of utter resignation. Mr. Thorne, sign it. This is the best possible outcome we could have achieved. If we fight this any further, you will be left with absolutely nothing. Those words were the final blow. All strength drained from Caleb's body. He sank deep into his chair like a marionette with its strings cut. He covered his face with his hands, and from between his fingers, suppressed animalistic sobs began to escape. Was it regret, despair, or self-pity for his own pathetic state? I listened to his sobs as one might listen to a distant storm, with no emotion at all. A few minutes later, Caleb lifted his tear-streaked face. His eyes were bloodshot, and the light of reason was gone. The last glint of pleading had transformed into a complete and bottomless hatred. Cordelia Sterling, he rasped, you are a monster. That was the last thing he managed to say. I still did not look at him. I simply gestured with my chin to the lawyer standing beside me. Continue. The lawyer slid 2 copies of the agreement and a Mont Blanc fountain pen to the center of the table. Mr. Thorne, please sign here. Caleb grabbed the pen with a trembling hand. It felt as heavy as a block of lead. He glared at the signature line with hateful eyes, then looked back at me one last time. His gaze promised to curse this sight, to curse me for all eternity, even from the depths of hell. Finally, as if resigned to his fate, he slumped forward. He scrolled a furious, illegible, but undeniably authentic signature in the designated space. After signing, he threw the pen down, leaned back heavily in his chair, and closed his eyes as if he couldn't bear to see anything anymore. Caleb's lawyer confirmed the signature and added his own. The agreement was then silently pushed across the table to me. I picked up a different pen, a Cartier fountain pen I had brought myself. Without a moment's hesitation, in a fluid, powerful script, I signed Cordelia Sterling. Those 2 words were a more eloquent testament than anything else to my complete break with the past and my unwavering declaration for the future. After signing and capping my pen, I rose quietly. "I'll leave the rest to you," I told my legal team. Then, without once looking at the man collapsed on the other side of the table, I walked with regal composure toward the exit. I opened the heavy door of the suite and stepped out into the hallway. In that instant, the night view of New York, a carpet of scattered diamonds, filled the polished windows. I stood there for a moment, silently, gazing at the sea of lights. One life had ended, and another was about to begin. Did my heart swell with the elation of victory, or the emptiness that comes after total destruction? I myself did not know. But one thing was certain: I would never look back. My new story was quietly beginning out there, beyond those countless lights. A week after the signing, my lawyer called to inform me that all legal procedures were complete. The name on my official records, once stained with a name I despised, had been quietly restored to what it should have been: Sterling. I received the news while sitting on the sofa in my suite, feeding Leo a bottle. There was no great emotion, no elation, just a deep, quiet sense of relief, like finally taking off a tight, ill-fitting suit I had been forced to wear for years. As part of his professional report, the lawyer also coolly added an update on Caleb Thorne's situation. Next Gen Innovations was already under the control of a bankruptcy trustee, its remaining assets being liquidated to the last penny for distribution to creditors. The high-rise apartment he had considered his last bastion had been seized by the bank and would soon be put up for auction. He personally now bore a debt of $5 million in damages, a sum astronomical to any ordinary person. It was a cross he would bear forever, as the Sterling legal team had structured the settlement to prevent it from being discharged through bankruptcy. Abandoned by friends, relatives, and even the mother and sister who had once adored him, he had effectively vanished from society. No one knew his exact whereabouts. Rumor had it he was working day laborer jobs under a false identity, moving between cheap motels on the outskirts of the city. I listened to the report while gently wiping a drop of milk from Leo's lips. I felt nothing, no hatred, no pity, no nostalgia for the man I once loved. Caleb's fate was to me like hearing a news report about a stranger in a foreign country. He was no longer a character in my life's stories. He had been demoted to a piece of information. The wreckage of the past was being cleared away legally and socially. But one final piece of debris still remained in my heart, a heavy weight that needed to be settled. Several weeks after the divorce was finalized, on a clear autumn day, I gave an order to Mr. Graves. "Mr. Graves, please have that Maybach from the west garage brought to the main entrance." For a moment he looked at me, trying to divine my intention, but he asked nothing. "At once, Miss Sterling." Soon, with the deep rumble of its engine, the jet-black car glided into the circular driveway. Its perfectly polished body reflected the autumn sun, gleaming as if it were wet. I, having left Leo with his nanny, stood alone before it. The Maybach, a symbol of celebration, a gift from my father for my 20th birthday, it had become a tool for Caleb's vanity and greed, and the vessel for the deepest humiliation of my life. I gently touched its cold hood. The smooth, hard sensation traveled up my fingertips. Every time I saw this car, the cold wind at the bus stop, the handful of cash, the sound of Caleb's family laughing as they drove away in it, it all came rushing back. It wasn't anger I felt, nor hatred. What welled up in my chest was an overwhelming pity for my past self. How could I not have seen it? How could I have believed I loved a man like that? This car was no longer a symbol of celebration. This car was the embodiment of the foolish, miserable Cordelia Sterling of the past, who had been blinded by his lies and had lost sight of her own worth. "Mr. Graves," I said, my eyes still on the car, "I am getting rid of this car. Shall I contact the dealership, Miss Sterling?" "No." I shook my head firmly. "Have the Sterling Asset Management Company sell it through official channels and donate the entire proceeds anonymously, not in my name, to the national network to end domestic violence." "Are you certain?" "Miss Sterling, yes." I finally looked away from the car and up at the clear autumn sky. If this car can be used to help mothers and children who, like my former self, are being mistreated and isolated from society, then perhaps the humiliation etched into it can be redeemed just a little. There was no longer any hesitation in my voice. A few days later, a large car carrier quietly entered the sprawling Sterling estate. It was the day the Maybach was to be picked up. I, holding Leo in my arms, watched silently from the wide second-floor balcony of the main house. Workers expertly secured the black car onto the carrier's flatbed. Its engine would never be started again. It was no longer a machine for driving, but a relic of the past being hauled away. Soon the carrier began to move. The Maybach slowly receded from the estate where I was born and raised. I watched without blinking. It passed through the long approach, under the heavy iron gates, and finally disappeared from the estate grounds. The red glow of its taillights vanished around a bend in the tree-lined road. In that moment, a single hot tear traced a path down my cheek. It was not a tear of lingering affection for Caleb. It was not a tear of nostalgia for our happy days. It was a tear of farewell for my foolish past self, the pitiful woman who had been hurt, who had endured humiliation, who had clung to the illusion of love. With that tear, the Cordelia Sterling, who had been Caleb Thorne's wife, died completely. The past had now been reduced to ashes. I roughly wiped the tear away with the back of my hand. What remained was a surprisingly clear and serene heart. It felt as if a heavy weight that had been stuck in my chest for years had been washed away. My body, my soul, felt light. Bah. Leo cooed in my arms, a meaningless but precious sound. I gently nuzzled my cheek against my son's. He was warm. He was alive. The future was here. That evening at family dinner, Harrison looked at me intently before the meal began. Then, with eyes that seemed to see everything, he said, "You seem to have moved on." I met my father's gaze and smiled serenely. "Yes, Dad. As of today, my past is completely over." He nodded, deeply satisfied. My mother, sitting beside me, also looked relieved and gently squeezed my hand. "Then the timing is perfect," Harrison said as he unfolded his napkin. His voice had a definite ring to it, heralding the beginning of a new chapter. "Next week is the annual Economic Summit Gala at the Plaza. You will come with me." "Yes? It is time for you to see the world where you belong. The new world where you will live from now on." The sudden yet undeniable invitation took me by surprise for a moment. But then I felt a faint but distinct excitement for a new challenge budding deep in my chest. I was no longer bound by anything. My life was my own. "Yes, Dad." I nodded firmly. I would be honored to attend. Harrison's eyes, upon hearing my reply, shone with a deep satisfaction and an unwavering trust in his daughter. The door to a new world was now quietly opening before me. Several months passed after I shed the heavy, damp coat of my past. The seasons turned from winter to spring, and in the Sterling family's gardens, the first crocuses began to push through the once frozen earth. My life revolved around the single certain light of Leo's growth, calm and fulfilling. The day he first uttered the sound, "Mama," the day he first rolled over. Each milestone was a priceless shining gem in my memory. And then the day of the Economic Summit Gala, which my father had foretold, arrived. For the first time in a long while, I stepped into the depths of my vast walk-in closet. There the glamorous dresses I had collected in my single days before meeting Caleb Thorne slept quietly, having lost their owner. They all felt like someone else's clothes to me now. After some deliberation, I chose a long gown the color of the deep midnight sea. Devoid of any unnecessary embellishments, Its simple yet perfect cut beautifully accentuated the lines of my body. It spoke not of a young girl's flamboyance, but of a mature woman's quiet confidence. I sat before the mirror and applied my makeup, foundation to smooth my skin, eyeshadow to add depth, and finally a lipstick in a subdued rose shade. The woman in the mirror was no longer the pitiful creature who had watched her husband's moods and endured her in-laws' barbs. She was Cordelia Sterling, a person who had reclaimed her dignity, who possessed an unshakable strength and a deep self-love gained through motherhood. "Oh, Cordelia, you look beautiful," my mother breathed as she entered the room. She gently placed a delicate necklace of scattered diamonds around my neck. "Go on, dear. Or perhaps I should say, welcome back to the place where you belong." To her words I responded with a quiet, knowing smile. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was electric with the energy of the people who moved the country. The light from magnificent chandeliers reflected off polished glasses and the jewels of the women, scattering into countless particles of light. Political giants, titans of industry, cultural icons, and the ambitious young people trying to curry favor with them. This was the world I had once despised and run away from. But as I stepped into its vortex, escorted on the arm of my father, Harrison Sterling, what I felt was not fear or revulsion. It was a quiet exhilaration, like a general calmly observing the battlefield she was about to conquer. "Harrison, good to see you. And who is this beautiful young lady?" A portly former prime minister approached us with a jovial smile. "Allow me to introduce my daughter, Cordelia," Harrison would say each time, and a look of surprise, followed by open curiosity, would cross the other person's face. Most of them knew of the scandal the Sterling heiress had endured, but seeing the poised, dignified woman standing before them, they were visibly bewildered by the gap between the tragic heroine of gossip and the reality. I met their gazes without flinching, holding my head high. I would offer a perfect smile and an elegant nod. My confident demeanor instantly transformed their vulgar curiosity into respect. In the corner of my eye I could see my father smiling with satisfaction. Later, while my father was deep in conversation with an old friend, the chairman of a major bank, I stepped away from the crowd. I stood by the wall, sipping a glass of champagne and observing the throng. Just then a calm, intelligent male voice spoke beside me. "You must be Cordelia Sterling." I turned to see a man standing there. He looked to be in his mid-30s, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. His demeanor was the antithesis of Caleb's flashy ambition. It exuded a quiet confidence and deep culture. His sharp, clear eyes bespoke a keen intellect. For a moment I was on guard. A strange man approaching me at a party usually meant one of two things: lust or a calculated attempt to get close to the Sterling name. "I am," I replied, my face a mask of perfect politeness. "And you are?" The man, not flustered or overly familiar, simply bowed his head respectfully. "Forgive my forwardness. My name is Julian Vance. I'm the founder of Vance Capital." Vance Capital. I had seen the name in business journals. It was an up-and-coming independent investment firm that had achieved remarkable success in recent years by investing in cutting-edge fields like AI and fintech. Its young founder, Julian Vance, was famous for shunning the media, his face largely unknown, a mysterious but powerful figure. "Mr. Vance, I've heard of your work. The pleasure is all mine. I was speaking with Mr. Sterling earlier and happened to see you. I was so struck by your poise that I felt compelled to introduce myself. Please forgive me if I've disturbed you." His words lacked the sycophantic tone of flattery or social pleasantries. They conveyed only a sincere and genuine sentiment. "Not at all," I replied, the ice of my caution beginning to thaw just a little. Julian didn't force the conversation. He stood beside me, champagne glass in hand, and looked out at the crowd. "It's a wonderful party, but sometimes I wonder, behind all this glittering light, how much talent is out there going unnoticed." His words struck a chord with me. It felt as if he were talking about my former self, buried under the false persona of Caleb Thorne. "Isn't it your job, Mr. Vance, to find that very talent?" "It is," he said. "It's my life's work. He then turned to face me directly for the first time. His eyes were incredibly clear. "Miss Sterling, I hope you don't mind my saying so, but I was aware of your situation through the less-than-kind media reports." My heart skipped a beat. So that was his interest. But Julian's next words completely upended my expectations. "However, seeing you here tonight, standing on your own 2 feet, so completely unshaken, I am convinced of how unreliable such rumors are. You are a much stronger and more beautiful person than I ever imagined." Those words were not about Caleb, or my family, or my money. They were a clear, unvarnished tribute to Cordelia Sterling herself, the person everyone else had either pitied or ignored. I was speechless. I could feel a warmth spreading across my cheeks. It was as if a warm stone had been dropped into the frozen lake of my heart. "You're too kind," was all I could manage to say. "Not at all," Julian said, shaking his head gently. "I believe a truly strong person is not one who never falls in adversity. It is one who, after falling, can rise again even more beautifully." Then, as if nothing had happened, he gracefully changed the subject. "By the way, the painting on that wall. It's an early work by the American artist Jackson Pollock, isn't it? His drip painting technique represents the chaos and energy of life." Listening to his intelligent commentary, I realized that for the first time in a long time I was having a conversation with a man as an equal. He wasn't interested in my father's influence or my family's wealth. He was simply interested in me as a person and was showing me respect. I was surprised by how pleasant that felt, how much it restored my sense of self-worth. Soon I sensed my father looking for me. The party was winding down. "Mr. Vance, I'm afraid I must be going." "Of course. Thank you for your time." As he said this, he held out his smartphone. A QR code for exchanging contact information was on the screen. "If you wouldn't mind, I would very much enjoy speaking with you again. About art or the economy. But please don't feel obligated." His manner was so gentlemanly, so unassuming. I hesitated for a moment, but it seemed that what the man before me was offering was not ulterior motives, but a genuine token of intellectual curiosity and friendship. "Of course," I said. I took my own phone from my small handbag and scanned the code. After we had exchanged contacts, Julian took a small card from his pocket. "Actually, a special exhibition of Gerhard Richter's work is opening at the MoMA next week. Your father once mentioned that you have a deep appreciation for his art. The card was a special invitation to the exhibit." "If you'd like," Julian Vance said, looking directly into my eyes with a gentle smile, "would you care to join me?" His words were a quiet but firm knock on the long frozen door of my heart. A new wind, a new world, a sure premonition that my life was about to become colorful and vibrant, once more filled my heart with a sweet and slightly poignant anticipation. The encounter with Julian Vance was like the first ray of sunlight after a long winter, finally heralding the arrival of spring in my heart. Our weekend visit to the Museum of Modern Art, as promised, became more than just an art viewing for me. It was a truly special time. Julian spoke about the art like an expert, but never in a pedantic way. In front of Gerhard Richter's photo paintings, he discussed memory, records, and the ambiguity of truth. Before the color chart paintings, he spoke of the beautiful coexistence of chance and order, and he politely asked for my opinions. Each of his words was like fresh water for my intellectual curiosity, seeping into my parched soul. Dates with Caleb had always been about his bragging and high-end restaurants meant to satisfy his ego. There had been no real dialogue, but my time with Julian was filled with the satisfying joy of two minds meeting, resonating and elevating each other. As we sat in the museum cafe afterwards, I suddenly found myself speaking. "I want to start something on my own." Julian looked at me, surprised but intrigued. "I could work for my father's company, I suppose, but I want something else. I want to build something on my own 2 feet. For mothers and children who are suffering like I once did, unable to speak up or ask for help." It was a vague idea I had been nurturing deep inside since the day I had decided, in my humiliation, to donate the Maybach. Julian nodded slowly and deeply. His eyes held a sincere light, accepting my words not as the whim of a rich heiress, but as a cry from one human soul. That's a wonderful, wonderful idea, Cordelia. If there's ever anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. That passion of yours will surely have the power to save many people. From that day on, my world began to regain its color at an accelerated pace. I presented the idea to my father. I wanted to establish a charitable foundation for mothers and children. Harrison's eyes crinkled with joy at his daughter's first self-initiated vision for her future. He assembled the best lawyers, accountants, and consultants from Sterling Holdings to work for me. It wasn't just financial aid. It was a father's deepest expression of love, giving his daughter the strongest weapons and shields to realize her own dream. I threw myself into the preparations like a fish returned to water. I cared for Leo during the day, and after he was asleep, I would pore over vast amounts of data in my study and hold online meetings with experts. I absorbed knowledge voraciously, as if to make up for the years I had been isolated from society. I was no longer the frail woman who needed someone's protection. I was a young queen with a clear vision and an unshakable will, building her own empire. Julian Vance was also a constant presence as a reliable advisor and a good friend. He provided information on advanced charity models from overseas and offered astute advice on running the foundation based on his own experience as a CEO. Our relationship was too intellectual and serene to be defined simply as romance. It was more like a partnership of souls who respected each other deeply as individuals and found joy in growing together. One day, on my way back from the office space I had rented for the foundation's preparations, I was gazing out the window of my car when a familiar yet repulsive sight crossed my vision. In a dilapidated shopping district a little ways from the city center, in front of a grimy diner, a man in oil-stained work clothes was squatting on the ground with other day laborers, eating a stale hot dog. His back was hunched like a stray cat's. His vacant eyes seemed to curse the entire world. It was Caleb Thorne. The car drove past without stopping. I gave his form a single glance through the glass. I felt nothing. No anger, no hatred, not even pity. It was the same as seeing a stone on the side of the road. The man who was once my entire world was now just a part of an unfamiliar landscape with no connection to me whatsoever. He was living the life he had chosen, and I was living the life I had chosen. That was all. In that moment I clearly understood that I was truly free from the past. He no longer had a single line in my story. On a calm Sunday afternoon, when the spring cherry blossoms were in full bloom, I was walking in a large park with Leo and Julian. Leo was taking wobbly steps on the lawn, occasionally losing his balance and plopping down on the soft grass. Each time Julian would laugh and say, "Whoa there, Leo. Nice try," as he gently picked him up. The scene was so natural and warm it gave me the pleasant illusion that the three of us had been spending our time like this for a long, long time. We walked slowly under the canopy of cherry trees. The falling petals drifted down on us like a benediction. "Cordelia." Julian said my name quietly. "Yes, your foundation's name. Stella Maris, Star of the Sea. It's a beautiful name. Thank you. I hope it can be a small beacon of hope for mothers lost at sea in a storm, like the North Star for sailors." "It will be. I know you can do it." As he said this, Julian gently placed his hand over mine. It was warm and strong, not the controlling strength of Caleb, but a supportive, protective strength. I was not surprised. I simply squeezed his hand back gently. No words were needed. There was no need for passionate declarations of love between us. There was only the unshakable certainty that our souls were quietly, surely drawn to each other. With my other hand, I gently held the hand of my toddling son. In my right hand, the small, soft hand of my beloved son. In my left, the large, warm hand of a partner I respected and trusted. I looked up at the sky. It was a vast, cloudless blue. There was a time when I had looked up at this same sky and been crushed by despair. A time when I had cried in humiliation and cursed the world. But now this sky seemed endlessly gentle, blessing my future without limit. I had my father, I had my mother, I had my beloved son, And I had a partner to walk with into the future. My marriage to Caleb Thorne may have been the biggest mistake of my life, but it was because of those hellish days that I learned what true happiness was. And the value of standing on my own 2 feet. I was no longer an accessory to someone else. I was not the frail woman who couldn't survive without someone's protection. I was Cordelia Sterling, a mother, a woman, and the sole protagonist of my own life. Mama, Leo called out in a clear voice from beside me. I bent down and gave my son the most gentle kiss in the world. My life, in the truest sense, had only just begun. There might be difficulties ahead, but I was no longer afraid of anything. My place was here. In the gentle sunlight, the sound of our 3 laughing voices echoed through the blooming cherry trees, on and on.